on the day 2, we have students track also, where there are 2 tracks this time, where about 20 papers, about 30 papers are there, because we have to give only 15 minutes time because of large number of papers. And the students from even Germany is there for presentation. So that is very interesting. So I was surprised. I was amazed, to be very honest.
Wow.
The students
That's
from
great.
Germany is also presenting.
Yeah.
Then we have students across India. So
Wow.
that is the for student track only, separate, because we encourage students to do research, so that when they graduate, there as a managerial skills, when you do research, your left brain becomes more active, analytical skills goes up. So we believe that when your analytical skills are high, the decision making ability becomes better and more refined. So with that belief, we are encouraging many students to do research.
Yeah, that's good.
So
An important way to learn.
Us, and some of the students who presented when you came, today they are general manager within 3 years' time.
Wow.
I was
fantastic.
Surprised. One or two people have rose to that fast. In a mid-sized company, not in a large company, but in a mid-sized company. So I was happy with their progress. So
that's
made
great.
me also believe that yes, the students should be encouraged to do research. Even in a small way, at least they will start analyzing, analytical minds, analytical skills goes up.
So with your permission,
sir,
can we start?
We are going to start, Yes,
okay,
sir.
Yes, sir. Welcome back and good evening to everyone present here. What an informative day it has been. As we have reached the final stretch of this eventful conference for the first day, to complete this evening, I would like to introduce our keynote speaker for this event, Dr. Dirk Baldwin. Sir is the Dean of College of Business, Economics, and Computing at University of Wisconsin-Parkside. He is also the chair of the Information Technology Practice Center and has received the 2008-9 Community Engaged Learning and Research Award. He has tremendous consulting experience in database development, web applications, simulation, project management, and ID planning. Sir is also an associate professor of MIS. Sir is today going to speak about moving from smarter to better businesses, governments, and universities. We hope our audience will derive great benefit from your speech, sir. The stage is all yours.
Thank you, everyone, and thank you for making me part of your evening, Friday evening, in fact. For me, it's I'm just starting the day, but I know for you, I'm the last thing on your day. So I really appreciate the opportunity to speak to all of you. I hope that that you'll find the presentation interesting, maybe at least parts entertaining, and that you might learn something from what I have to say today. I'm going to base my presentation. This is the first time I've given this presentation. I'll base it a little bit on some of my research, on some of my experience working with companies, and also my just observations on things going on in academia. So it's sort of a blended presentation, and we'll see how it all turns out. So thank you very much for being with me today and listening to this presentation. I'm going to share my screen now and bring up my PowerPoint. I do presentations in WebEx, I've done them in Microsoft Teams, but I'm not sure if I've ever shared my screen in Zoom, even though I've been on several Zoom conferences. So we'll see how this part goes. I know many of you are probably used to it, but it looks like this will work. And if I bring it up like this, well, let's see. Okay, so this looks like it'll work, right? So now you can see my full screen. Hopefully people nodding their heads and so on. So yeah, the thing I'll talk about today is from smarter to better: businesses, governments, and universities. You know, everybody here, I think we can give ourselves a compliment. We're smart. Everybody has a bachelor's degree, and at least in the United States, only about 32% of the people in the United States have a bachelor's degree. Worldwide, it looks like about 13% of the world has a bachelor's degree. And many of you, or at least the students, are working on a master's degree. I mixed up my figures. Worldwide, about 6.7% have a bachelor's degree. In the United States, about 13% of the people have a master's degree. And of course, a much lower percentage of people have PhDs or graduate degrees worldwide. So, we can sort of pat ourselves on our back. We're a relatively smart group. We know that there's lots of benefits to having higher education. Our life longevity is higher, tends to be higher income, better health. And so there's a lot of good things about having a higher education degree and working hard, being smart. Now, when you do a search on smart people on Google, in addition to the movie by Dennis Quaid and Sarah Jessica Parker, you don't always find that being smart is useful or is good. So I did a quick search, and these are some of the topics that I found. Why the smartest people make bad decisions compared with average IQ. Why smart people are better off with fewer friends. 6 surprising downsides of being extremely intelligent. Why smart people aren't better at transcending their biased views. Bad news for the highly intelligent. Superior IQs are associated with mental and physical disorders, research suggests. Why do smart people do foolish things? The romantic disadvantages to being smart. So unfortunately, not everything is always better as a result of being smarter. And sort of that is a bit of the theme for today, is that being smart is great. Looking at smart businesses or trying to be a smart business is great, but it's not always as easy as what we think. And so I found a graph that sort of illustrates sort of the concept that I'm trying to present throughout this talk. And we'll periodically revisit this idea. And as many of us are researchers, many of us want to get a PhD. And so we're under this belief that doing research is a good thing. And if we follow the traditional research model, we do the research, we communicate the results, we hope that by communicating the results in some way, decisions will change, and in some way, things will be better as a result of our research. You can see this frequently in the sciences. If you just think about global warming, there's lots of research on global warming. It all tends to say that man is making the world warmer. And so we write papers about it. We hope decisions change and things get better. But in fact, this is sort of a fallacy. We do lots of research, we keep doing research, but at least in terms of global warming, our behavior doesn't change so much. The world is still getting warmer. And if we think about other similar things with the pandemic, we know, for example, that there's quite a bit of research that the vaccines are safe, but just telling people that the vaccines are safe doesn't seem to, at least for a group of people, doesn't necessarily mean that that they're still going to take the vaccine. So at least in the United States, we've reached a point where it's getting a little harder to get people to take the vaccine. So it's more than presenting people with good information, highly researched information. There's more of a process involved in order to actually change the world as a result of what we're trying to communicate. I saw this, I don't want to take complete credit for this particular slide. I saw this, I think, by Adam Grant. It was somewhat similar to this this particular slide. So important thing is just by providing people with more information doesn't necessarily result in better decisions and things getting better in whatever domain that we're working with. So what is being smart, right? If you look in the dictionary, being smart is having or showing a high degree of mental ability. But that's sort of the traditional definition. Today, we refer to things as smart somewhat differently. We think of technology as being smart. So today, the word smart is not only associated with people, but to things. We have smartphones, for example. It's a technology that uses or may use artificial intelligence, machine learning, big data analysis to provide cognitive awareness to objects that were in the past considered inanimate. So, you know, this definition may be a little bit of a stretch, though we know of some things that are considered smart that may have these particular properties. But as I mentioned, smartphones, at least compared to our old phones, seem to be more capable, and we call them smart. And we, in our homes these days, we have typically, many of us have more than one smart thing. We have cameras, we have smart lighting, smart heating and cooling controls, smart thermostat, and they're connected in some sort of smart home, and they help run our homes somewhat better. If we take this out to business, we have the Internet of Things or the industrial Internet of Things. We have all these smart devices that are trying to help us run our companies in some sort of better way. So the question is then, by using these smart devices, can we actually make our companies smarter, our business smarter, our cities smarter, our universities smarter, or does it require more than that? And as a result of this smart technology, you're also seeing phrases on objects or organizations that we also call smart. So we have a smart university or a smart campus. You've heard of smart cities. I know that in India, they're at least, I don't know if they still have it, but they had a sort of a smart cities competition. Smart manufacturing or industry 4.0, smart business network are all terms, a sample of terms that we use to refer to something as smart. And if we go back to our original analogy with smart people, the question is then, are they really smart? Is introducing smart technology a way to make something smart, or of course, do we have to do something more than that? So what are some of these things, right? So a smart campus is, when people use the term smart campus, they typically are referring to the infrastructure of the campus. So the University of Nevada in the United States was ranked the smartest campus. It wasn't ranked the smartest campus because it was an Ivy League school, and University of Nebraska is a fine university. It was rated the smartest campus because of its parking system, its lighting, its ability to put sensors on some of its key equipment to diagnose potential problems. And so that's why it was called smart, because of the sort of the physical infrastructure. There's some interesting things with smart campuses, and sort of an analogy or a similar thing would be smart buildings. So for example, if you go to a sporting event these days, I'm pretty sure it's probably similar across the world, but we're moving away from paper tickets, and we use our smartphones to scan in our the show that we're allowed to be in the sporting event. We may even pay through our phones. In many countries that you do this even better than you do in the United States. I was, within the last few years, I was at a conference of athletic directors and professional sports administrators, and they talked about using facial recognition instead of your phones to let you into the sporting event. And the advantage they saw to that was, when you went up to buy concessions, it could just recognize your face to charge you. And further, if you wandered around the facility, it would sort of track where you are all in hopes of creating a better customer experience for you. Now, I know when I bring that up to my spouse, that all sounds really scary, and it probably sounds scary to many of you as well. But you can see sort of the direction that that technology is taking us, and definitely you could see potential disadvantages as well as scary things with that sort of capability. Smart university, I think of as slightly different than a smart campus. One of the universities in the United States that is highly credited for changing their success is Georgia State. So Georgia State has really increased their retention and graduation rates. They've done it across the board, from majority students to underrepresented minority students. And they've done it in a lot of different ways, through better data analytics and so on. But one of the things they did was create a chat bot, an artificial intelligence chat bot. And what they noticed was that their summer melt, when the summer melt is when students accept to go to your university, but then during the summer they decide maybe to go to somewhere else or not go to university at all. And so universities are trying to prevent the summer melt. They want people to show up in the fall. So they created this chat bot that was a way for prospective students to interact with the university, answer questions about the university. It wasn't a person behind it. It was, artificial intelligence, and it was really, it did really well. 80% of the people surveyed scored the chatbot 4 out of 5 stars in their responses. And in fact, over time, they noticed that their summer melt went down by 21.4%. So it's considered very successful. And when you learn about these chatbots with universities, you find that some people actually would rather interact with an artificial intelligence agent than an advisor. They feel more comfortable with that. I think perhaps because they don't feel judged. The thing is just sort of answering their question. So that's an example of an application in a smart university. Smart city, there's a couple different ways to look at smart cities. There's sort of the ambitious way to look at it, and then there's sort of the practical way to look at it. So Wikipedia says that a smart city is something that collects data through sensors, through demographic information, just put through large databases, creates better government services through online access to those services. And then sort of a more ambitious definition is provided by Holland. So people in academics tend to like these sort of definitions. So he defines it as territories with a high capacity for learning and innovation, which is built into the creativity of their population, their institutions of knowledge production, and their digital infrastructure for communication. So the purpose of a smart city is to somehow be a better city, to serve its people better by becoming smarter as a city, both in terms of its services, but also serving the population. You see lots of applications in smart cities. A popular one is parking, a parking app that tells you where an open parking spot is. Garbage collection apps, changing the way you do garbage collection. So at least in most parts of the world that I know about, the garbage trucks are assigned a particular time. They come through on that day and pick up your garbage. And with some cities using smarter garbage systems, they wait until the garbage bin is full and the sensor detects when it's full, and then the garbage trucks come out then, and then they save money and pick up garbage that maybe would have been around longer, so the city might be cleaner. And so at least, especially for commercial garbage, they're finding some benefits of using that type of system. You see some smart cities working on better energy efficiency, better climate, not climate, but pollution control. And it's quite extensive. Here in Racine, where I live, we were rated as an up-and-coming smart city. And so one of the goals is to serve the people who are living more in poverty in some way, which is a really ambitious goal, through better education, better access to transit, better access to employment. So that's what a smart city is all about. Smart manufacturing, probably many of you know Industry 4.0 or digital manufacturing. There's lots of words for these things. So using robotics, artificial intelligence, sensors to help predict when equipment needs to be repaired, digital twins to help simulate a manufacturing environment before you actually do the implementation. So in where I live, Rockwell Automation is a big manufacturer and service provider for smart manufacturing. Many of the companies, though, are probably not here yet. In fact, when I was in India, I went to a company that was in Pune that worked with metal, and they had very highly technical machines to do that work, and hired engineers to run the equipment. So at least where I am in the United States, this is an area that we're still trying to build too. Smart business networks are bringing people together in creative ways beyond an individual business to serve some need. So you could think of the supply chain, which might involve multiple businesses, and so the smart technology is to better integrate and make more efficient that supply chain. There's other types of systems that you probably know, or types of organizations. So Airbnb is an example of bringing people together for sort of hotel accommodations or room accommodations. There's other ones sort of similar to that. Fiverr helps people find independent consulting jobs, bringing people together. Roadie.com is a system that matches people who are traveling to people who need packages delivered. So sort of virtual organizations that technology can support. Lots of ways that we think technology can help support a business. And of course, in some areas, the technology is improving that organization and the organization's benefit. Now, when I think of these systems, and the way that many people think of these systems, is they think of them as ecosystems. So an ecosystem is, sometimes you think of it more as a bottom-up approach to behavior rather than a top-down driven planning approach to behavior. So an ecosystem has lots of things that interact, they interact with each other, and the behavior of the whole system is based upon that particular interaction. In a city, for sure, that's true, right? We have governments, we have private businesses, we have the citizens, all interacting, at least in a democratic, capitalistic society. Those things interact to produce whatever comes out of it. And so when we're putting in smart technology, we're introducing something else to that ecosystem. And that smart technology hopefully positively interacts with that ecosystem, but the ecosystem also interacts with the smart technology, and you might get something done in somewhat a different way. So to be successful, several things have to happen. Well, one, the actual technology has to work, right? So that's a potential source of a problem. If the technology is not doing what you want, if it's difficult to use, then it may not achieve the goal that it needs. The organization itself could be a source of a problem. It could be a part of the solution. The organization might have bad processes, and so you might be introducing technology to support processes that are already bad. And then, of course, you have the entire ecosystem, and the way that things interact might interact in a way that you didn't expect, and so you won't get the results that you achieved. Or hopefully it interacts in a way that you that's even better than you expected, and so ultimately you might get better results than you had hoped for. So what are some of the things that could go wrong with the smart technology? And I'll just give you a few examples. You know, you might have unreliable or irrelevant information. I think we've all seen cases where we're getting information and it's not quite the right information. For example, a very simple example is I determined some of our award winners at UW Parkside to get into certain things. And, I can't, unfortunately, always trust the GPAs that are communicated to me. So therefore, I have to go back into the system and get what's the real GPA, so the grade point average, in order to know whether the person is eligible to even be in this honors association. Recently, an MIT researcher discovered that with facial recognition, that facial recognition software in the 100 or so algorithms that she looked at was best at recognizing the faces of white males and worse at recognizing the faces of people of color, so Black, Hispanic people. And so that has major implications. In some countries, they use facial recognition software to identify people with criminal records. And so what was happening was people were being identified and pulled over by the police based on improper recognition of their faces. Then you have incorrect information, and of course you're not serving the society, you're not getting what you want. Of course, there's security and privacy information that people worry about with these systems. And there's lots of other examples of unethical information or things that we think are unethical. So for example, in some of the intelligence systems that I've seen, one system that medical offices use is a system to help them schedule. And that system to help them schedule is partially based on the probability that a person is actually going to show up for the appointment. And if the probability is a little bit lower, they might schedule multiple people to appear at the same time under the assumption that some of them aren't going to show up. Studies have been done on this system, and they have found that underrepresented minorities are more likely to be scheduled together because historically there's a pattern of not showing up for their appointments. And so we consider this sort of unethical because we don't think that race should be used as, people of certain races shouldn't be treated differently from other races. So that's an example. We see this kind of thing also in used by banks or by economic development organizations looking at investments in certain communities. The code that's used to determine the place to invest tends to discriminate against certain areas in cities based upon their ethnicity. And so that kind of system is considered unethical, and we have to work to correct the system. Organization issues. So you might find lots of reasons that the organization is not working well, and would introducing a smart technology really help with that particular organization? Years ago, we all know the story of Kodak, right? Kodak was the #1 company for cameras and film and so on, but their strategy was so focused on short-term profits and film that they failed to react to the digital transformation of taking pictures. And so Kodak ultimately fell from its lofty position as the #1 seller of these kinds of cameras and film to something that didn't succeed. And would introducing better data analytics help with a strategy that was particularly poor? Data governance is also important. With artificial intelligence, being able to share data in order to learn about what you have is important. And so there can be a resistance to that in the organization so that the systems can't work quite the way that they should. Resistance to change, skills and education gap. To introduce smart manufacturing, you have to have the people that are capable of understanding the data that's coming out and of working with the equipment in order to make the change. And even people who are highly educated have cognitive biases. So whether it's the gambler's fallacy, hindsight bias, confirmation bias, anchoring bias, just defensiveness, all of this can sort of prevent your ability to use the information correctly, even though you might be getting potentially better information. And then there's ecosystem issues, how introducing the new technology into the organization ultimately affects the organization. And there's, you have to get the systems to work with each other. You have to get the systems to work with other types of systems, technical or not technical systems. You might have a misaligned strategy. And so there can be unanticipated consequences of doing things with changing information system. So one system that you might be familiar with are customer satisfaction surveys, right? They sort of seem like a good thing. And so you can see why companies introduced customer satisfaction surveys into their organization, because they hope to improve ultimately customer service. But at least in the United States, what happens is the employees who are subject to that talk to their customers and sort of sell the fact that they're highly judged by these customer satisfaction surveys, and please give them a high rating. And so they sort of guilt you into giving them a high rating, and some people it might work, some people it may not work. And so if that's the case, the organization might not be getting the data to actually learn from. They're getting data that has been manipulated by the service representative. Now, of course, you would also hope that the service representative is actually providing better customer service because they know that they're going to be judged or subject to a customer satisfaction survey. The other thing, part of this, is that there is some sort of bias due to the selection process. Some customers are going to fill out the surveys and some not. Some who are probably dissatisfied may be more inclined to fill out the survey, or maybe they were super satisfied and they're inclined to fill out the survey, but sort of those in the middle may be less inclined to fill out the survey, or they just don't have time to fill out the survey. So Forrester did a study of these kinds of customer satisfaction survey systems, and they found that the survey systems really didn't contribute to better customer service. Though another company did a study and they found that people who took the customer satisfaction survey did feel that they were better served. Nowadays, you're seeing artificial intelligence systems not only analyze the customer satisfaction surveys, but also go out to social media, review sites, and to compile a more general or more comprehensive look at how a company is performing to provide sort of better information to improve service. Some of these systems are creating customer profiles so that per customer, they know how somebody was satisfied, so that when a sales representative brings up their profile, they can see, oh, this person, wasn't satisfied last time. Can we do something better for this particular person? So introducing one thing sort of changed the ecosystem to create additional things, hopefully to better create a better system. So the point is sort of like the fallacy we had before. There's something in my area of MIS called technology push. And so technology push is something you see especially by technology companies and by people in computer science and MIS. They think that there's a technology focus, and you hope that by pushing technology at the organization, decisions change and ultimately you lead to better performance. But hopefully you can see that that's not necessarily true, that it requires more than that in order to achieve your particular results. Some of the research I've done has been in the area of smart cities. I presented a paper at the International Conference on Information Systems. Well, actually my co-authors presented a paper that studied case studies. It was really a meta-analysis of other people's research of case studies on smart cities around the world. We're continuing that research with some surveys and focus groups, trying to figure out what are those things that enable or inhibit a city from becoming smarter by using smart technology. So this particular slide just talks a little bit about that. You'll see that, at least before the pandemic, lots of cities were investing in smart technology. It was a popular area of study. Cities were focused on becoming smarter, and they involve technologies, as I mentioned before, things like sensors in the roads, better internet infrastructure, better government services, and that sort of thing. Well, as a result of doing our study, well, the things we were looking at were what are the key enablers, inhibitors of public value, co-creation in smart cities ecosystems, what enables or inhibits governments to realize the expected investments in smart cities. And we found through our research that, and what we did was we took the most frequently cited papers in sort of a 10-year stretch. And we found that 73% of the papers really indicated a technology push strategy, where technology was the thing that was driving the initiatives. Some of the papers identified a city and some didn't identify a particular city. So if you identified a particular city, 65% provided evidence of a technology push strategy rather than a sort of a pull strategy where you're implementing technology as part of a bigger sort of ecosystem initiative to improve the smartness of your city. Even though there was a technology push strategy, 53% of the case studies had an ecosystem focus. There was lots of different domains that the cities were focused on. Some were focused on, the biggest number were focused on transforming city services. There was some focused on energy, a couple focused on climate and tourism. And you can see some of the other areas: data analytics platforms, improving citizens' participation, smart home for the elderly, home energy monitoring, public safety, environmental pollution control, parking. There was a few that didn't mention any particular service domain. They tended to be really focused on the technology aspect. Some of the things that weren't so great is many cities didn't specify any concrete objectives to their smart city initiatives. So they were hard to judge whether they were successful at all. Technology push strategies dominated, as I said before. And then only 10 of the papers, we looked at the top 30 papers, only 10 of the papers realized any public value at all. So only a third specified that they achieved the results that they wanted to achieve. 5 of those were sort of a social value. Some of these had more than one, that's why the numbers don't add up. And 4 were environmental values, so they actually reduced the amount of pollution in a city. And some saw economic benefits. One example that sort of typified what we saw was the city of Philadelphia. So the city of Philadelphia wanted a smart city initiative. IBM came in and they created a system for them to try to improve, it's called on-ramp, to try to improve the education of the residents of the city. It was a badge system. People could get on their smartphones and earn badges by running through educational programs. Hopefully people who were, not highly educated, many who didn't have a high school degree, And after a couple of years of doing this, they saw no benefit. They didn't see better educational outcomes. In fact, the mayor of Philadelphia, when asked what was the benefit of this program, he said the benefit was that they got publicity as being a smart city. But there was no actual educational benefit. Some of the problems were that they didn't go through the public school system. They didn't work with the teachers. They didn't work with the social service agencies in the city. Both institutions that were designed to serve these residents. And you had results that you might expect. Many people that they were trying to target didn't have internet access, so they didn't have access to the actual learning system. Some just didn't have time or the motivation to get this done. So that particular sort of impressive initiative really didn't work out for the city of Philadelphia. On the other hand, there was another city in Holland that was just trying to reduce the crime rate in its entertainment district. And it started out as a better lighting, a smarter lighting system. And they brought the lighting companies in, they brought the small business owners, they brought in government, and the result was good. Crime did get reduced. They noticed greater tourism to the area. They still had to manage the interaction between those people involved in the city, however, because eventually competition grew. The lighting companies always focused on better lighting. The small business owners wanted to focus on getting people into their particular stores instead of the entertainment district as a whole. So they sort of had to manage that, but they did find that at least crime was reduced. They didn't have much data on whether the actual economic impact of the city had been seen yet. Some of the smart cities initiatives just haven't had enough time to determine the exact outcome. Some of the things we found that were enablers of success, just as I mentioned, so the soundness of the information communication technology, how it was integrated, good relationship between the stakeholders, managing different stakeholders' interests as they merge during the project, so managing the entire ecosystem. Inhibitors included lack of readiness for managing the technology, low technology skills of city staff and citizens, commercialization of smart cities projects to enhance a business partner at the expense of its relationship to the overall good, no necessary honest discussion of a city's existing social, economic, and social technical problems were inhibitors to success. A lot of times you find in smart cities that it was really the technology companies that were, as I said, pushing the smart city technology, and that technology push actually inhibited success. These days, some of the technology companies are a little bit, they're disappointed with the government's reaction to their technology initiatives, because one of the problems is governments don't have a lot of money, and so they don't always have the money necessary to enhance these or to invest in this particular technology. We put together a smart city ecosystem. This is probably a little bit hard to understand in the time that we have, but the whole goal is to create public value. The government has an organizational capacity that you need to uplift. You need to have citizen engagement because they ultimately give credibility to what the government is doing. But we found that it was necessary to create this other government structure or government private-public partnership in order to manage this process, because it was important to get not only the government involved, but the citizens involved and private businesses involved in order to achieve the outcome that you wanted to achieve in the Smart City Initiative. There's also research on smart universities. I found this particular paper interesting on smart campuses. They had two graphics. One sort of does talk about the various aspects of the university ecosystem. So of course, learning, administration and government, lifestyle for education, all sort of people issues security, mobility, environment and efficiency, some of that sort of building issues. But then when they talked about in the paper, it really sort of became technology focused. And so you can see the input to their system, sensors, data, data management, big data, data acquisition, mobility, you know, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 out of the 6 items going into the Sustainable Start Campus were all technology oriented. And then they had educational models thrown in there as well. So it was interesting that they didn't talk more about that. At UW Parkside, we have a lot of actions going on. We're really aggressive at trying to improve. And so our strategic actions are things like improving our retention and graduation rate. We're growing, but only through our online and graduate programs. Our face-to-face programs aren't growing. Of course, the pandemic had something to do with that. But in the United States, our high school graduates are declining, especially in the part of the country that we're in. And so fighting for face-to-face students is difficult. And we're trying to reach more adults who do not have college educations to get them a college education. And so that area is growing through some of our innovative curriculum. We're forming partnerships. We're not doing everything on our own. We're forming partnerships with other universities. We're forming partnerships with providers to help us market our program. We're highly focused on community relations. We've just started a new center for research on innovation in smart cities. And so that's an area that we're trying to build up our reputation. We're trying to improve our diversity and inclusion. We're the most diverse campus in the University of Wisconsin system, trying to improve employee satisfaction. And we have some building initiatives going on. At the same time, I have sympathy for people working with us. Within the last 3 years, we've implemented a lot of new IT. So Navigate is a new advising system for students. It also has a data analytics component. We are implementing PeopleSoft advising. So that's an advising system really to help advisors more than students. We have a new workflow automation system. We have a new purchasing system. We have a new HR system. We have a new travel and expense reporting system. We have a new budget and financial system. We have a Canvas, maybe lots of people use, but that within the last few years, that's a new learning management system for us. We used to use D2L. We have a new customer relationship management system. And in the fall, we created a Parkside app that had things that you would expect, like maps and access to advising and that sort of thing to try to improve. And of course, this information technology has to match with our strategic actions in order for all of this to work. We can get better information, but if we don't know what to do with that information, it won't really matter. So what are some of the issues that I've seen as we go forward? Well, with Navigate, very few people actually have access to the data analytics. I had access, but for some reason it disappeared. The faculty don't really have access to data analytics, and the data analytics tell us things like what courses predict success for our students, what courses are bottlenecks for our students. And even those people that have access to that data, it's one thing to have the data, but it's the next thing to know, well, what do I do with this data? What are some of the initiatives I could undertake to improve retention and graduation and success in our particular programs? And so working with advisors, working with people with that kind of knowledge is important. PeopleSoft advising is coming new this summer. So far, we haven't had training for faculty. And so, of course, the training would be necessary if we want our faculty to do it. BP Logix is our workflow automation system. This one has had an interesting effect because honestly, as the dean, so a lot of workflow as the dean, I end up having to approve things. In the past, when it was paper-based or email-based, honestly, I would ship it off to my secretary and my secretary would check to make sure that it was correct before I approved it. But with the BP Logix system, it bypasses my secretary and it comes straight to me. And then I was supposed to figure out whether it's good. Now I can figure out whether I approve the expense, but I don't necessarily know if all the receipts are in order to pass the auditors. So the system sort of has changed. Well, there's a flaw in the system for one. but also we're working now to put the auditors before my approval instead of after my approval, so that the auditor can check to see that the receipts are in order, and then I can check to see whether it's actually an approved expense. Shop UW is a brand new system. The training is extensive. I already received something I needed to approve, but I didn't have the actual training to do it, so I'm hoping that it's simple. My UW, they keep adding features to it, and it's just sort of hard to keep up as part of our job. Our TER system takes time to learn. It created a lot of anxiety with the professors because of its complexity. Wiser is our budgeting and financial system. It actually works pretty well, but it has a data analytics and reporting tool to really be able to better understand where we're spending our money and how we might be able to save money. But most people don't use that portion of the system. Canvas was fairly different from D2L and took a lot of time to start. Our CRM system is new, so I don't really know it yet. The Parkside app has 1,000 downloads, which is pretty good, but it's still only about a quarter of our students. So we would like to see that app get a little bit more use. So we can implement all these systems, but is it actually going to achieve the results that we want to achieve? What are some of the things to consider as we are working through these, to create a smarter ecosystem? Well, the type of decision, if the system is transactional, if it's really just doing business, I think that system is easier to use. It requires less change on the organizational side. But if it's supporting a semi-structured or unstructured decision, such as how to improve retention rate, then more training is involved, more change is involved on the organizational side. How does the system integrate with existing systems? Does it need to integrate with any new systems? The quality of the previous system or process can have an impact. If there's a competing system, people are likely to hold on to that competing system. The size and diversity of the user base, a small user base is easier to train and get up to speed than a big user base. So Navigate is a big user base, and so lots of people need lots of different kinds of training in order to use the system. The availability, how much time you have to actually learn the system, and the overall complexity and user friendliness of the system are things that all can impact it. In Harvard Business Review, there was an article called Right Tech, Wrong Time by Adnur and Kapoor. It was sort of an interesting graph on what it takes for new technology to change an ecosystem, and it compares it to existing technology. So on the horizontal axis at the bottom, the ecosystem, this refers to the current technology. What's the prospects that something in the ecosystem could change to make the current technology relevant? And on the vertical axis, it's what has to change in the ecosystem. Is it not much change in the low, or is a lot of change in the ecosystem in order to make it successful? So if, for example, you're in this bottom quadrant, that means that the new ecosystem, not much needs to change in order for it to work effectively. And there's not a lot of opportunity for the current systems to impact the new system. And so this is creative destruction. It's pretty easy for the new system to replace the old system. And so here they give an example of bigger flash drives replacing older flash drives, inkjet printers versus dot matrix printers. These are sort of old examples. Up in the other quadrant, it's the current ecosystem is, it can change in order to compete against the new one. And the new system requires a lot of change in the ecosystem to make an impact. And so this is robust resilience. The new system is going to have a hard time making an impact. And so one of the examples here were RFID chips versus barcodes. So you can probably, for people my age, you can remember RFID were the big things. They were going to come out and change the world in terms of inventory and how we buy things. And the progress has been much slower than what we expected. Well, one reason is that barcodes could be changed to have more and more information. And so some of the impact of the RFID was a little bit higher. Plus the cost of RFID was high. Electric versus gasoline cars, right? So we're seeing more and more electric cars, But we've also seen the existing cars be able to change and get better gas mileage. So the progress is just sort of gradual. Well, we're sort of running out of time, but you can take a look at these illusions of resilience. So that's low ecosystem. So there's not much chance for a current system to change to get better, and it requires quite a bit of change for the new technology to work. And things like GPS navigation versus paper maps took a while. High definition TVs versus standard TVs. And then robust coexistence means that not much change is required in the ecosystem for the new system, but there's a lot of opportunity for the current systems to adapt. So they both coexist. People have a choice in what they're doing. So just as a summary, in order to make a success in an organization, in a city, in a business, in industry, my recommendation is don't think about smart technology projects, think about smart ecosystem projects where technology is one element of the project. Make sure you determine your desired outcomes. At least in our research, not enough, especially cities were specifying the outcomes that they wanted to achieve. Smart technology does not necessarily mean better decisions. And of course, change management is important as it is in any particular project. So I know I don't have, I'm happy to entertain any questions that you have. And I guess I will, unless somebody has a need for me to go back to a slide, I'll stop sharing. All right. Thank you very much for your attention.
Thank you, sir, for giving a very valuable inputs on the new process and smart cities and smart education, smart this one. We value your presentation. It was very enlightening and useful. I request the Recon Committee member to take over from here.
Thank you, sir. We had a very fruitful evening. All thanks to everyone for being here with us. Your presence has enhanced the spirit of the entire event. With this, we come to an end of the first day of this conference, only to come back tomorrow with information and learnings jam-packed in the form of presentations by not only faculties but also students, our future business leaders, and speeches that are going to leave you all with a sense of appreciation. Thank you for holding on to us with patience, and we hope to see you all with the same enthusiasm tomorrow at 1:45 p.m.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, everyone. Thank you for
very much.
sticking around.
Yeah. Thank you very much, sir. Dr. Baldwin, for keeping the promise.
Oh, you're welcome. It's my pleasure. My pleasure to help.
It was very nice to see you again. And we look forward to see you next year with your family.
Dr. Srivastav, maybe ask a question, or do we, I know the students are not, I don't know if they have to stay. I want to ask a question on behalf of the students, actually.
Okay, yes, Kirti.
They must be exhausted with all the organizing of this. It's a really big achievement. And I just want to tell you all from Simsri, this is an incredible opportunity. Dean Baldwin's presentation, the other opportunities, the fact that you are not only engaging in graduate research, but you're engaging in community work by actually putting on this conference year after year, research as a student, not a doctoral student, research as a student, and community engagement work as a student are considered two of about 10 high impact practices, meaning that you're getting a better education when you do that. And I can say that not all organizations, masters or bachelors, offer that opportunity. So I want to go back to you, Dean Baldwin. I want to thank you for a really powerful talk. You said this is sort of your first presentation of this content, and I'm thinking it'll be a lifetime and I'll never get there. So there's a big difference, clearly. So Thank you very much. On behalf of the students, I'm going to put myself in that room. I've sat in one of those rooms many, many years ago. I earned my master's in finance from SIMSRI, and I'm very proud of it. The only reason I studied finance is because I had constrained choices. I got the classes in law and other things that I needed, which I couldn't get on the marketing side of the ship. But to the question, I'm going to pretend for a moment that I'm one of the students in the room that's studying, say, finance. My undergraduate it's a Bachelor's of Commerce, which is the equivalent of a BA in business or a BS in business. So I have no engineering background. I'm not studying information systems in my master's or analytics, maybe finance, maybe marketing. And I'm listening to your presentation, and I already have an internship. My understanding is all of these students have an internship this summer, so which is another fantastic outcome for an institution to be very proud of. So I'm sitting here thinking, as a student, love the talk, so much opportunity, so much going on in these allied fields. I don't have an engineering or analytics training or interest. Could you speak a little bit from your vantage point as you've done this research, as well as a dean and a person who studies these things? What are the job opportunities for someone coming out of an MBA program, anywhere in the world? I'm not saying constrained to a particular geography, that you see as emerging for people that are not studying engineering, artificial intelligence, that sort of thing.
Yeah, so that's a really good question. So I'm gonna let me talk my way into an answer. I think because my background is MIS and I kind of see things through that lens. If I was a finance person, I probably would start to learn the technologies involved with artificial intelligence and big data, data analytics. That doesn't mean you have to learn it at your university though, right? A lot of people learn that material through online training. So LinkedIn Learning is a place where you can get certified and badges in that. So my experience, I'm seeing more and more students have that, especially PhD students have that training, but our master's students don't quite have that training yet either, right? Universities are sort of getting ramped up. But what I am seeing is our students on their own getting it through alternative sources. Because areas like cryptocurrency, fintech, in accounting, audit, tax, all of that is being impacted by AI. Now that doesn't mean you have to know AI, right? You don't have to be an AI programmer, but to be able to learn, to be able to use those tools effectively, I think is important. The traditional opportunities are still there for accounting and finance, right? So you're going to find the banks, you're going to find financial institution or industry needing accountants and finance in order to be able to manage its money, to make recommendations on various investment decisions and so on. So our students still get jobs in the traditional sort of roles, but gradually, especially in the more advanced companies, you're seeing more and more tools to help you do your job, and especially in ERP systems, business intelligence systems, and I think being aware of those particular tools over time, I think is more and more important. But learning is ongoing, right? So focus on what you're getting now, and then continue to learn in the future. So, you know, just as an example, in finance, understanding the financial models that are being used that are helping you do your job is important. So if you're with a credit, you know, if you're using an algorithm for credit worthiness or for determining where you should invest, having some knowledge of what the basis for that recommendation is good. Being able to train it, that algorithm, in a way that's appropriate for your company is good. Honestly, so, you know, I know I'm sort of rambling. So I think that would be exceptional. Now, there is another part of my experience though, that I recommend to my own children. I find in industry, sort of, even to this day, a lack of Excel skills, right? So even building up your ability to use Excel can make you a star at a company. And using Excel effectively as a modeling tool for crunching data in databases is important, pivot tables and that sort of thing. Making attractive spreadsheets where you can do what-if analysis is something that not everybody can do. And so, you know, there's kind of two ends of the spectrum. As an immediate need, just using Excel or a statistical package will have put your leg up on a lot of people. And then connecting that to a database to actually analyze large amounts of data with those tools is another step. And then ultimately moving into AI or big data analytics is, you know, a final step that I think you can take.
Thank you, sir. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Thank you for the question.
Record committee, please take over.
Thank you, Dean Baldwin.
Thank you very much for your question.
Thank you once again, sir. And it is
Thank
a great
you.
honor to have you here. And we'll call it a day, sir, for today. And
all right. Thank you. And let me thank the students too. You know, I echo what others have said. It's just really impressive that you put on this conference. And I know that when I was there in person, I was treated so well. It was so well organized. And, you know, learning how to organize a conference through video conference, I mean, that's another skill you have, right? Being able to put people in certain rooms. I mean, this went seamlessly. So fantastic job in putting this together. And thank you very much. And thank you very much to Dr. Srivastava for inviting me.
Thank you, sir.
And good luck with the rest of your academic career.
See you, sir, next year.
All right. See you. Bye.
Okay, sir. Bye. Yes, sir.
Thank you all and good night.
Good night, sir. Mr. Das, please take over.
Yes, sir. So on behalf of Recon Committee and SIMS3 students, we all thank you for joining with us for this wonderful event. We hope to see you tomorrow at 1:45 p.m. with the same enthusiasm and to carry forward our conference. Thank you, everyone, and have a good night.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir. Thank you, students. लैपटॉप का ऑडियो म्यूट करके
I'll end the meeting.
Manoj just forgot.
Ma'am, the meeting is over. You may leave.
YouTube
अरे जो बचा है उसको मैन्युअली रिमूव कर देता